This episode of Quitters is brought to you by Primal Kitchen.
How are you?
I'm very much feeling this. This is a holiday season when every other Christmas season, I don't have my kids. And it becomes kind of a spiritual thing for me, kind of a renewal, like taking stock of my life, cleaning out closets, getting rid of stuff, and kind of looking at the new year with sort of some positivity as opposed to what am I going to change and how am I going to be better? This year, Primal Kitchen is definitely going to be part of it. I want to nourish myself.
I love that. I'm going to be focusing on paying attention to what I want and blocking out some of the noise that pulls me in a million directions, like ordering food all the time, like going out to eat all the time. And so I'm going to be doing some cooking with Primal Kitchen for sure.
I've really come to love it. It's in my refrigerator. I have to say, I'm becoming more and more a fan every day. So Primal Kitchen for 2023, people. Quitters listeners can save 20% at primalkitchen.com/quitters. Or find Primal Kitchen products at your favorite local grocery store or retailer. What are you going to make?
I'm going to make keto buffalo chicken wings. I love a chicken wing. My favorite flavors are buffalo, lemon pepper, hot. And I know that I'm going to make these keto buffalo chicken wings. They're going to taste delicious. I'm going to feel good afterward. They're going to be all organic and yummy. And I'm going to have protein. I'm going to feel stronger. I'm going to be able to sleep well. It's going to be lovely. I can't wait. By the way, Julie, I bet you'll like this. Primal Kitchen is co-founded by a woman named Morgan Bueller-Zanotti. Proud mom of 2 with another on the way. I know someone else who has 3 kids.
I have 3 kids.
And is a woman founder.
And I'm a woman founder. I support women founders. It is so freaking hard to run a business, to work, to get out there and to be pregnant and raising kids. It's nearly impossible. And my hat is off to every woman that does it. Kudos to Morgan Bueller-Zanotti. Kudos to all women founders.
The first decade of our career was really hard. We were independent. We were queer women. We were always out. We were in the indie rock world, which was predominantly cis, hetero men. We were really left out. We were pushed into the margins. We weren't respected. We were signed when we were 19, so everybody thought we were just some sort of record label monster. No one believed we actually wrote our songs. We had to we went through a real gauntlet of bullshit, to be honest. But everyone who approached us would be from friends, family, industry. They'd be like, you're living your dream. This is amazing. And I think we had a lot of shame about how hard it felt and how lonely we were.
Okay, today we had on Tegan and Sara, a duo, sisters, identical twins, at least so far. And I fangirled out hard at the end, but they mean a lot to me, Chad. And they were brand new to you, though. So I'd love to hear kind of what you thought.
They were, which I think is a dynamic that happens sometimes on this show, which is that I just learned of them yesterday. And then it's I go to their Wikipedia page, I read the dossier, I look at their Spotify, and I find out, these are big, huge stars. But in the interview, they're really smart. They have processed a lot of what they're going through together as twins in life and also individually as half of a twinship. And it was pretty profound to hear them talk about how they have carved out their own identities in that sort of life. Yeah.
And I took it personally as the mother of twins, just seeing how you're one entity and yet you're obviously completely separate entities, how that give and take and push and pull affects even a conversation like this was really interesting. And you led off with that. And they also were talking about their new TV show on called High School that's going to be on Amazon.
Amazon Freevee, right?
Okay. That they did with Clea Duvall, who's an incredible actress and director and now producer as well. So please enjoy Tegan and Sara. I don't know why I assumed you'd be in the same place, you're one person. That's ridiculous.
Me too.
You'd be shocked at how many people, specifically border agents, when we come back to our home country of Canada, who'll be like, well, if you're in a band with your twin sister, where is she? Well, she lives somewhere else. We're not together. Well, you don't live together? No, we're adults. What do you mean do we live together?
Tegan, you've spoken first here today. Sara has not yet said anything. Is that something you guys figured out as a dynamic? Or is there like a leader and a co-partner or whatever? Like, how did you form a who takes the first step dynamic between you?
I mean, we are still figuring it out. It's only been 25 years of doing press and talking to people professionally. Actually, one of the most stressful pieces is when someone will say, okay, so so here's my first question, whatever. What's your favorite color? Either of you can answer. And then we just sit there like,
and you're
okay.
yeah.
And it's gotten easier with when we're doing, Zoom and video interviews. But, back in the day, we used to do phone interviews. I mean, for like literally 15 years. No. And it's just so awkward. And I find that, the sort of the etiquette of just directing questions, which often happens more like on, shorter form radio programs or even television. And I always feel like, what a relief, because we don't have to like non-verbally decide who's going to answer the questions. If Tegan seems more like she's like chomping at the bit, we she'll go first. And then we just kind of, then if she's answered something, then I know, hey, I'm kind of like, I'm in the batter's box the next time up,
I mean, we're really still sorting that out ourselves, especially since we're not in the same room. And just to give context, Julie and I met a little over a year ago. We've been doing this podcast since February, and we're sort of in our second season. So we haven't even been doing it for all of those 10 months straight. We're trying to sort of refocus on quitting stories specifically, because that is a niche that we can fill and that we have things to say. And so, Sara, I read something that I think you said. It sounds like you two went to therapy last year. The reason I think it had something to do with the fact that you were like feeling some greatness pressure, like that you wanted people to love your band and not like it, and your book and not like it, and you wanted to be a great band and not a good band, and you wanted to be great authors, and you've been so accomplished and celebrated across mediums. Like, what was the pain point that you were feeling that led you there?
The most acute crisis or issue that brought us to therapy had more to do with kind of boring administrative things. Like Tegan and I were in the process of, sort of rebuilding after 18 years with the same management team. We decided we wanted to find new managers after over a decade with the same record label. We were kind of starting from ground zero, and we were the last two standing. And I think that process brought out a lot of strengths and weaknesses in our dynamic and how we make decisions and how we process grief and how we get over things. And so in some ways, going to therapy and working with what was essentially like a career coach, like a lot of her work, the therapist we saw really focuses on dynamics that involve like businesses that involve family and multi-level structures and generational partnerships between relatives, really, and family members. And so she was really helpful in helping us sort of peel back, the layers of the onion of our relationship and where we were at that specific moment. But, to sort of speak more to what you're talking about, Chad, I mean, I think that's a fundamental tension point in our relationship, myself and Tegan, is that, to use actually our therapist language, I think I've always been someone who's excelled at, trying to become great and really disciplined and focused and really hard on myself and really self-critical. And I think Tegan is easier, more relaxed about leaning into what works and not worrying so much about what doesn't work. And I tend to be the person who's like, I think we could still be better. I think we could let's take these tiny little threads and let's pull them and see if we could just unravel it all, And I think that dynamic makes us a really interesting band and an interesting creative collaboration. But I think we drive each other a little crazy. That that idea is kind of a central part of what both makes us work and also kind of has us teetering on the edge of conflict a lot of the time.
What you just described, though, as a family system. You may say, Sara, she's more relaxed about it. But if you, Sara, were not driven, maybe Tegan would have to pick up that slack. I mean, it's like you guys are in a business relationship, but you're also in a family system. And without it's easy to say, oh, she's relaxed and I'm driven. But honestly, they can't exist without each other. Or do you agree with that? I want to hear what Tegan has to say on that one.
Yeah, no, I think, Julie, you're onto something there. I think if there's too much of one of us, and it would be too much. And I think that we balance each other like any partnership, like we always joke that it's kind of like we're divorced parents and music is our child. And I say this because it's like, all of us go through the same thing, which is that at some point you graduate, maybe it's high school or college, you move out on your own, right? And there's like a natural separation that happens from your family unit. And then at some point, if you're lucky, you find a great partner, maybe you have kids or you get an animal, whatever it is, but you start to build your own family unit. And so your priorities change. And because Sara and I have spent our entire adult life building our career together, in a weird way, we've created a second family unit, but it's still us. So it's still a family unit. And that family unit is in conflict with our original family unit. And there's also, as we've become adults and cultivated our own relationships, Sara's married and has a child. I'm married. Like, we lived in different countries for a decade. We've lived in different cities the majority of our adult life. But then we have this child, which is music, and now has become books and television and all these other things that we have to co-parent. And so I think that we definitely have strengths and weaknesses. And I think over the last 20 years, one of the things that we've really leaned into is that there are certain things that Sara likes to do and things that Sara's better at than me. And we absolutely balance things by not both trying to be that person. And I think that when we're in a good mood or in good spirits, we tend to notice those things about each other and make room for one another. And that over 20 years has lessened our conflict. But absolutely, I think that without Sara being the way that she is, we would just be different people. We'd be a different band. And if Sara was like me, it would just be too much. And I just think we've learned to accept that. And I see how Sara is, and I think like, I'm so grateful to have that partnership.
Sara, I'm going to keep forcing this like analogy of how we're trying to shape our show to what you all do. And what you all do is like, at this point, like 20 plus years of Grammy nominations and best-selling books and 10 albums, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that our show is good, and I also like really want it to be great. Like, I want it to be a show that people cannot wait for Monday because they just need to hear our voices and meet our guests. I do really think it is a solidly good show, but I also know it's not yet the thing that people are like crawling, their skin crawling because they haven't heard it in a week. And that makes me mostly feel rage. And
wow, I did not know this.
Yeah, no,
we're having a little family therapy ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
all right.
Where I'm going with it is, I think part of it is like, this show is very analytically sound. Like, we're really good at talking about things of the head. And I feel like it could use more like of the emotional body. So I want to ask, like, in those therapy sessions or in the rooms when the two of you are having something that looks like conflict, what are the feelings that are coming out in those moments? Can you like predict each other's feelings because you've known each other since birth? Like, what language do you all speak in those moments?
Over the course of 20 years of making things, and we don't just write songs and record albums, we tour and we do press and we make videos, and there are so many like offshoots of what it means to be in a band and to be songwriters and storytellers. And, there are times in my life where I feel 100% proud, confident, assured that we're doing the right thing, validated, like positive, sort of affirming feelings about certain things. And then there's other times where like, I love our album, but, damn, we made some videos that I don't feel super happy about, or we're having conflict with our record label because they want to pick one single and I think it's a different single, So I think one of the big learning points for me in being in a successful creative collaboration and really just being successful in general is this idea that you are never going to reach whatever this pinnacle is, this greatness, this thing, without it changing again, sort of like almost underneath your feet. The whole point is that you have to be nimble. You have to be prepared to be hustling and working and evolving, stretching, whatever, all the therapy words. You kind of have to be comfortable and accept that you'll never sort of like reach the goal that you set for yourself and feel satisfied by that goal. I think that reaching those goals can be a point of pride, and it can be about learning, and there can be sort of a rest period. But then I think naturally people like us, people who are creative and cerebral and, successful, we're just going to we're going to want to go back down the mountain and find a different way to climb it. I think that that's ultimately what keeps us all going. I mean, that's really like what life is about. I try to think about my unrest or my focus on trying to be better as not necessarily a negative thing or a thing that has to be dramatic or a crisis. In fact, I really think of it as like, it's part of what makes being creative exciting for me. And I think, when Tegan and when we get into any kind of tension or conflict, I think at the root of that is, the kind of communication that appeals to both of us and the kind of comfort that appeals to both of us. Tegan would probably use maybe the phrase love language. What makes me feel good or what makes me feel safe or what excites me is sometimes just different. We just have different words and different approaches. And we look at the world in slightly different ways, which again, ultimately really is one of our strengths as a band, but can be one of our weaknesses as sisters and collaborators where we're the furthest away from each other in our conversation or our language. And, the one thing I will say about our therapist that we've had in this recent sort of patch of unrest, one of the things I really like about her is that she is not interested in digging down into any of these things. We will get into these sort of like verbal rabbit holes and she will just be like, okay, like almost like a timer, like, okay, that's enough. We've heard it. Sara,
Whoa.
stop. Tegan, do you hear Sara? Yes. Sara, do you hear that Tegan hears you? Yes. Now can we move on? And I find that very interesting.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Chad, you know about my special relationship with Sattva mattresses, right?
Your whole life is a Sattva commercial, Julie.
No, but you know that my oldest son won't even sleep on any other mattress.
Damn, you've created a monster.
I truly have. He really is. Well, all this love has caused a little bit of a problem because every time I change the sheets, I'm like thinking to myself, oh no, are these beautiful Sattva mattresses? It deserves better sheets. Are these sheets not worthy of my Sattva? Are they beneath my mattress?
No, I see what you did there.
Yeah, I know. So, Chad, I just don't think that my current sheets are good enough for my Sattva. So guess what I'm going to do?
I don't know. I don't suppose Sattva makes sheets.
Oh, hell yeah, they do.
What?
Percale, sateen, and my personal favorite, 100% Belgian linen. They're hypoallergenic, breathable, and made from responsibly sourced fabrics. Because my mattress deserves the most scrumptious, luxurious sheets in the whole world, Chad. It deserves nothing less. I deserve nothing less. And I'm just going to say it. My son probably deserves nothing less, too.
Julie, I couldn't agree more. Ollie deserves the best.
He does. What do you think happens when the other two hear these commercials and they're like, how come we don't have Sattva mattresses? I'm like, no, someday.
Only Ollie.
Only Oliver. Oliver's the oldest. It's his birthright.
Yes, save $200 when you purchase $1,000 or more at sattva.com/quitters. That's SAATVA.com/quitters.
Something that you can do in only 15 minutes that'll make you feel like a whole new person is get a wax. That's a fact. It only takes 15 minutes. European Wax Center has 15-minute appointments, which is efficient. I like that. But it is a process that needs to be comfortable and you want it to go quickly.
Really?
No one wants to go slowly at a wax.
You just want it to be like, you just want to...
Yes, but they use a wax that is like, it's not tearing the skin. You want to grab the hair and not the skin. And when it's done right, it is done right. And you just feel like, you feel like you just exfoliated and cleaned and showered. Like you can't feel cleaner and better than after you get a nice fresh wax. And when they are professionals, you're like, you surrender and you're like, boop, boop, boop. It's not unpleasant. And it feels quite good to be free of all that hair.
And don't forget, like, you get your first wax free. Your first wax is on them. With 15-minute appointments, an exclusive comfort wax, and an array of post-wax products, Beating the Winter Blues is smoother than ever before. Want to give us a try? Your first wax is on us. It's on us. We are part of the European Wax family.
We are part of it. We are. To experience a new state of smooth at European Wax Center, make a reservation today. Your first wax, like Chad said, it's free, baby. Free. You're going to love it. Are you guys always this polite? Like he says them with the language of your conflict, and then you mentioned a love language. You seem to know how obviously, and you should publicly have your issues resolved. You're not supposed to bring them out to the press. But is there are you
Our
always
issues
this
are not
polite?
resolved. Just so you know, our issues are not resolved. No.
Okay. But are you always polite in discussing them with each other?
It's a good question. It's an interesting question. And I would say like there's more than one answer. I think that Sarah and I carry an enormous amount of shame about the conflict that we have because before we had developed all of these skill sets and this ability to process politely or to be more professional, it would just spew out everywhere. We would beat the shit out of, like beat the shit out of each other as teenagers, as young adults. Like we would cry, scream, come unraveled. We've fought on stage before.
No.
Yeah, like thankfully very early on in our career where no one noticed, but we had
I was going to say, is there a video? Can I see this on YouTube?
It's fascinating. It's fascinating that you use the word video because there was a show very early on in our career. I think we were 19, maybe 20 years old. We were working with this manager very briefly. I think he represented us maybe 6 months. And, Sarah and I were very much in conflict about what we wanted. Sarah potentially didn't even want to play music. She felt a bit forced into it. And anyway,
professionally,
professionally, yeah, like felt like she was unsure what she wanted to do. And I was very much like, let's get a record deal. And this is our career. And this is who we're going to be. And we'd flown out to Toronto. We were West Coast people, but we'd flown out to Toronto to play a show. And, it was one of those early gigs where you're like playing to absolutely nobody. And our manager at the time, he had someone come and film it because we were going to put together an electronic press kit. And he needed footage of us performing. And we did not like attack each other on stage. We weren't like, it was subtle in my memory of what happened, but it was very clear to those that knew us that we were having an argument on stage and we were being quite petty with one another. And a few days after the performance, our manager had us to his office and he showed us the clip of us fighting. And he was an older guy. Like he was like, he'd probably in his, I would assume 50s or 60s. I don't really recall how old he was, but he was much older than us. We were teenagers. And he showed us the clip and used language like you should be embarrassed of your behavior and really chided us for what we'd done. And we proceeded to fire him not long after. But I think that we spent a lot of our early career not knowing where and how to channel our frustration, our fear, our disconnect. We've been in and out of therapy our entire adult life, working with each other as we enter different phases of our career. And I think we have become more polite and more understanding. I think also at some point, it became clear like this is our path. And this path is together and we don't want to have conflict at all times. And I think actually both of us, we actually really don't have a lot of conflict in our life other than with each other. And I think we learn, the older we get and the more developed and more intense our adult relationships grow to be, we're able to bring those things back to each other in this relationship. And so I think that's where maybe that politeness or that respect seems to come from. That being said, we do fight and we do argue, and we've had multiple strategies over the years for that. We had a therapist who said, just ask the people around you for permission to do that. You make thousands of decisions a month. Like anyone would fight. Like that's not normal. Like the amount of together time and the amount of decisions you have to make that aren't just decisions to be made and then you leave them behind. They're decisions that affect our family and our livelihood and our future and our legacy and our history and our friends and family. And like, there's a lot of tension. We're not just deciding simple things. When we sign a contract, we're signing, when we signed our first record deal, we were 19. We just got out of that contract. We just turned 42. Like every choice we make has such an enormous deep impact on each other. And that's intense. And I just know Sarah's not going anywhere. And so I can mistreat her. I can ignore her. I can interrupt her. Like, that on some like level, like that's family in a weird way. You can say and do things you can't to anyone else. And I think sometimes when we're having our most conflict, it's when we feel the least taken care of by our team, by each other, by the world, whatever it is. But I trust that I can tell Sarah anything or do anything and she'll stick it out with me. And so I think we take a lot out on each other. So I think we've just learned to be as professional as possible around other people. We've learned to be united. We've learned to work out the majority of our issues privately. And then when we come to our team, to lead as a united front. And I think that helps us, but it sometimes also feels like we're not identical twins. It's like we're Siamese twins. I feel trapped and suffocated.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, get her away from me.
I'm going to shoehorn a little bit, but I did hear you say that you're both dealing with a lot of shame. Who gave you all shame? Where did it come from?
I guess it probably,
starts where it starts for everyone. I mean, our primary caregivers growing up, my mother, my father, my grandparents, there was expectations that everybody, was could be high functioning and didn't need a lot. Like needs were sort of cast aside, like, are you starving? No. Did you sleep outside last night?
Yeah.
No, you're fine. Walk it off. And that was, I think, a product of, coming from a lower middle class background. I mean, my grandparents' generation were objectively poor. They were, and then my mother's generation, she and her siblings, they were sort of the middle class generation, and they were working their way up to something in the sort of upper middle class world. And it was sort of like, yeah, there is no ascent if we're too busy sitting on the sidelines crying about how hard everything is. And I think that mentality was served to us, certainly, and specifically probably from our dad and my grandmother. Both of those people we loved desperately and profoundly, and yet there was very little room for physical comfort. There was little room for complaining or, needs wants, my dad would say. Our needs were met, but our wants were not. Desire, as a young child, obviously is not romantic, but it is like, I want more love. I want to be touched more. I want that Nintendo game. I want those shoes. I want. And I think that that early shame for me anyways comes from the things that I wanted and from the things that I needed that I learned not to ask for. And that I learned to live without. And in some ways those adaptations made me really resilient and strong and, independent. And a lot of the things that I went without as a young person, I learned to get those things myself, and that's sort of like pressure point of like being young and knowing that you want something and being told you shouldn't really want that or you don't really need that. And then still wanting it so much.
Is it the same with wanting a career that is excellent? And is that the same? Is there shame with that as well?
Yes, I do think that is true. It's sort of like, well, I want better reviews. I don't care about the Grammys, but also why don't we have a Grammy? Like there's that thing of like, and then should I want those things? Like I don't want to play arenas. Arenas are cold. Those weren't places built for music, but like, did I want that at some point? And then I like adapted to tell myself a story so that I didn't have to feel bad that we never got to that level or we never became that kind of band. I mean, I'm sure all of it is tied up in that same kind of wanting, but then feeling embarrassed or bad for wanting those things,
I would just interrupt and say that like, I think the way I was using shame, it was about also our relationship, like Sara and I's relationship. And I think that adding to what Sara's saying, like compounded with that was that all those insecurities, those fears, those wants that we weren't sure we were allowed to ask for things, or the first decade of our career was really hard. We were independent. We were queer women. We were always out. We were in the indie rock world, which was predominantly cis, hetero men. We were really left out. We were pushed into the margins. We weren't respected. We were signed when we were 19. So everybody thought we were just some sort of like record label monster. No one believed we actually wrote our songs. Like we had to we went through like a real gauntlet of bullshit, to be honest. But everyone who approached us would be from friends, family, industry. They'd be like, you're living your dream. This is amazing. And I think we had a lot of shame about how hard it felt and how lonely we were and how isolated we felt. And, we didn't have a lot of the tools you have now for marketing, like social media and SoundCloud. And like, it took us 10 years to get a tour bus. We used to take the Greyhound overnight between shows, like Sara and I, and one of us would stay awake to protect our shit. Like we managed ourselves for the first 3 years. Yeah, like the list goes on and on. But I think we had shame because from the outside, everyone was like, you're living your dream and you're doing what you want and you're doing it with your sister. She's your best friend. And like, we felt all this shame because it was like, meanwhile, we're back at the O'Connell Lodge, as 23-year-olds or 24-year-olds, like screaming at each other, like with bloodshot eyes, like, because we were scared and we were frustrated and we were lonely and we were.
And didn't know how, and again, to take it back
didn't know
to
how to
that
bring it up to anybody.
We didn't know how to bring it up to people and we didn't know how to ask for help because we had been told as young kids, and for good, and I don't want to like make my parents seem like they were monsters. They were barely 22 years old when we were born. They were both figuring out who they were. And they, my mom was at some point, our parents split up. It was like my mom was a single parent. She was going back to college. She was working at night to pay off student loans. I'm not trying to paint a picture like we were like impoverished or going without our basic needs being met.
Our therapist
more.
points this out right now. This is something we do. So
I know.
So when we say that we were neglected, we then immediately need to spend 10 minutes telling you how we weren't neglected. Go ahead, Sarah, continue.
But you are speaking publicly, and it is really hard. Chad and I do this too, where we'll get real about families and then walk it back because you never want something excerpted. And I read somewhere, and I think it was the book or the TV show, I can't remember, all you cared about is your mom loving it.
And wanting to give a fair, I like to think of it less like I'm walking it back and more like I'm broadening the scope of the context. Like I don't want it to seem like my mom was like, sitting on the couch smoking cigarettes and like, watching TV all day. I mean, she was our hero. She was hugely inspirational and she was a force of nature and she was doing all the things at once. And, parenting didn't take up as big of the pie as maybe traditionally of that era anyways. Mothers, we saw a lot of moms sitting at home, taking care of their kids, making them peanut butter sandwiches at lunchtime. And my mom was like, you can make your own damn sandwich. And also you can't come here because I'm going to be at school all day and working tonight. So you're going to a day home or whatever it was. It's interesting actually now being a parent myself and starting to think in the context of like, what would I do? Today's the first day we have childcare part-time, taking care of our 5-month-old. And I'm like, as I was leaving, I felt this crushing feeling of excitement to get away from him and go to work. And also like, I'm in this possessive phase where I like don't want anyone to touch him or love him except for me. And I want him only to love me. I'm only trying to color in a little bit more of the picture just because I'm afraid, to make it seem like my mom was just a pure neglectful person. But I wanted to say too about shame, one of the things that I've worked on so much in my 30s and early 40s is also just the shame of being queer and, and not completely understanding how almost impossible it is, at least for me, to erase or remove those sort of like internalized homophobic feelings that I had that I used to think were very simple. Like, oh, I feel bad about being gay. Like just very simple. Okay, well now I feel great about being gay. So how come the feeling is still there? What is that feeling? If I'm comfortable with being gay and I'm completely like I'm out and I've done all these things and I wouldn't want it to be any other way, then why does that feeling still linger for me? And it's taken me a long time to sort of understand just how like it just is me. Like, there is no getting rid of it. It's how I think. It's how I move. It's how I love. It's how I reject love. It's in all of me. And so I can't get rid of that feeling. I can understand the feeling and I can manage the feeling better, but I can't really get rid of it. And I think that's sort of a new revelation for me. And I think that is also tangled up in all my relationships and my music and the way that I see the world and the way that I experience the world seeing me. And, and I think that's just a lifelong journey.
Tegan, with that said, like, is the shame, because I'm not quite sure yet, and I am trying to sort of focus on if there's a quit in there somewhere, like, is the shame just something you have to sort of accept as an emotion that you're going to feel? Or is it something you're trying to drop off somewhere or process so that it's over?
I'm glad you're asking that because I think that is where we start to get to how different Sara and I are and why there's still so much conflict between us. First of all, I don't feel like I don't have the same shame around queerness that Sara does. I not at all, which is what makes our story so unique. It's partly why we wrote the memoir we did and why we wanted to make it into a TV show. It was very eye-opening for both of us to write the book and be like, wait, like for Sara, she was profoundly affected by it. She was like, I don't understand how, like, I have my journals from that time and I'm literally like, I kissed a girl. It was amazing. This is so incredible. And like, and for Sara it was just like a really, really, really different experience. And so my shame around that is really different. My shame around our early conflict and our misery. I came to understand probably in my late 20s that I could hold both. I could say the early part of our career was absolutely nightmarish at times. And I could also say we are the luckiest people on the planet and that this has just been the most tremendous ride and that we experience so little trauma compared to so many other women, especially queer women that I've come up with now and understand. And so I learned to hold both. And then at some point in my 30s, I threw
the bad stuff away and feel really differently about it. And in our most recent therapy, I think that was yet another profound sort of revelation and takeaway from our therapist was, Sara is still carrying a lot of that, and that's okay. And
But if she didn't carry it, would you have to have it? Like, it's that system again, where for me, it's always comforting when one of my sisters is more uptight than I am. Because I'm like, oh, good. She's holding that football, that fucking type A, I've got to do everything right football. And I get to relax for a second. But then when she puts the football down, I'm like, oh God, I got to pick it up. Is it possible that you could have that same shame, or that's just not even in your realm of, it doesn't sound like it was even in your teenage years or your younger years?
I think maybe it's both. Maybe some things that Sara carries, she carries for us. Mm-hmm. And there are some things I just put down. And because I'm now built my own island with my own life, mm-hmm. and I feel distinctly unique, and I am my own person. And, if Sara tomorrow was like literally done making things, done with the music career, like I feel I can go on. And so I've unlocked the part of me that feels that everything that happens to me or to Sara is in relation to the other. Like I have my own life and my own experiences, and that's freed me up to like let go of a lot of this stuff. I'd add only too that like, I think because we're identical twins, there's a whole element there. Like we have been contrasting and comparing our whole lives, and everyone from the outside has been doing that as well. And that at some point we had to understand that we are distinct and individual people, but that there is a part of our life, our existence, a big part right now, the work part, that we will always be seen as a unit. We'll always be the girls, the twins, Tegan and Sara, the band, them. Like that's just kind of how people see us. And our most recent experience in therapy was really eye-opening in that sense, because we went in saying, we need to be individuals. And and the therapist was like, yes, you must. And then 3 months in, she was like, actually, I want to retract that and go back to the beginning and say, no, when it comes to your work and your career, you guys aren't going to be seen as individuals, and you have to get over that. You have to lead together. You have to be united. And so I think in that sense, Julie, yes, I think some of the things Sara holds onto and carries, she does for both of us. And I think, there are things that there are responsibilities and there are roles I play within this partnership that Sara doesn't have to worry about. I tend to be much more extroverted and outgoing, and there are just things that I carry in our relationship that I think that make room for Sara to be more her. And I think that's how we're balancing that. But there are some things I've just let go of. There are.
And I don't want to put it on you. It sounds like a lot has been put on you. I just want to say briefly, I have twin sons. They are not identical. Are you sure you're identical? You've done DNA?
We haven't done the DNA. And honestly, we just sold a book about being twins. And that's one of the things we're going to do is be tested, because we were told there is a possibility. These days, it's more likely you'll find out and it's conclusive. But my mother swears that we are, but it's something that we definitely want to go get tested.
So my sons are not identical and they don't look alike, and no one mistakes them for one another. But I notice one is incredibly extroverted, one is very quiet, and I'm constantly trying to be the right parent to both of them, and understanding that there are things that one's extroversion provides for the other, and vice versa. And so it's very personal to me, and I might be putting that on you unfairly.
My nephews are twins, and they're really little. They're 1.5, and they look so different already, and their personalities are very different. And I see people already doing a confirmation bias thing with them, where they start treating them the way that they have shaped their identities in their heads. And it's becoming like, I'm seeing it turn into this divergent paths thing happening with them that I actually feel kind of uncomfortable with, because we don't know who they are yet. They're 1.5. I read where the two of you you guys started forming identities to like separate who you were from each other. Sara, does that sound right? Can you explain to me when that happened and like why that happened?
I think it happens all the time, probably from a very young age. Like my mom talks about us going through phases of being closer and then sort of almost rejecting each other at certain ages or certain periods of our lives, especially when there was things that we felt were scarce. Early life is harder because I do rely on the memories of people around us, and I don't really have strong memories. So adolescence is just it's just an easy place to really do it in a more like a truthful, honest way. But when it became clear that I was queer and that I liked girls, that was a very difficult time in my life. But I think it was, it was complicated. It was partly because I was like, oh God, I like girls. Holy shit. What does this mean? But also I wanted the girls' attention myself. For the first time, I didn't want it to be around. I wanted to have girls be around me alone because I didn't want the girls to like Tegan. I wanted them to like me. And I don't even mean romantically. It was just one of the first things that I remember thinking, like, I want this for myself. I want this attention for myself. And, twins it's complicated. It's like a hard thing to get into, especially identical twins, because we are so profoundly different, but we look so similar. It is such a uniquely distorting thing that happens. Like from the time you're little, you are constantly told and it is constantly reinforced that you are the same. And then the things that are different about you, it's so exaggerated. So it's like this cartoonish mirror that you look into and everybody else sees you through. And I don't think that it is a small thing to be on this planet for 42 years and not have people know who you are or which one you are and constantly tell you that. It is very destabilizing. And maybe for me, potentially more than Tegan, I still find it so bizarre. I mean, I've literally spent 42 years being like, no, it's totally fine that you don't know who I am. It's not fine. It's very weird.
It's not.
It's really weird. I mean, if you constantly showed up places and it was like, which one's Chad? Which one's Julie? Wait, I won't remember.
That happens to us.
But you would be like,
it does.
You would be like, oh my God. Like, but for 42 fucking years, people say that to you. And you're like, this is insane. This is an insane thing. It is a house of mirrors because I feel as different as you two are from Tegan. And so it's this thing where you are constantly sort of downplaying how disorienting it is to have people not see you and have people or only see something very specific about you. And so I think twins, it's very well documented. Twins have very different responses to this, and I'm actually married to a twin. And
an identical twin?
Not an identical twin.
Okay.
But even for her, to grow up as a twin and you're developmentally going through this gauntlet together and you're hitting these milestones at different times. So for example, I think when we think of fraternal twins, or especially if we think of like opposite sex twins, so my wife has a brother, she's like, it was so hard. She hit puberty in such a different way. She was like a cheerleader and tall and had a billion friends. And, Jeff was he just was a slower burn, in high school. And it was like, they're hitting these sort of like age milestones together. And it's like, she's lining up on one graph and he's kind of lining up on the other, socially, physically, whatever it is. And I think that that's really challenging and it's really unique compared to kids even who are like even really close in age. So I think for me and Tegan—
Oh my God, my research, like, because we're writing this book about being twins, there was a whole era where, twins that were put up for adoption would be separated. And this sounds absolutely monstrous to the outsiders. But for a moment in time, psychologists really believed that this would actually benefit, especially kids who'd been given away, that by sending just one child to this new home, they would get all the time and attention they need. Whereas if they'd gone with this other person, like, that the resources are divided, their time is divided, the attention is divided. And so for like a moment, and people were less likely to adopt twins. And so they really had this whole theory. I mean, it's totally fucked up, but in a way, it resonated with me when I was reading it because, as you said, Julie, you're spending so much time thinking how to be a good parent to both twins.
How to be a parent to both of them. Yeah. And it's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
And you're
because
great
they're
mom,
the same
Julie,
age.
from what I can see.
And do you guys have other siblings?
No.
No,
we have
way.
the two of you.
I feel like I can tell that. I actually wanted to say your transition just now from Sara speaking to Tegan speaking was like pretty phenomenal. You were very much in the middle of a sentence, and then Tegan, and Julie and I are. Julie has to sort of coach me to interrupt her because it's not really in my nature, and it's really hard to interrupt somebody in a way that doesn't feel like a car accident. But you all just did it. And
I think that there's a rhythm and there's a surrender that happens when but trust me, I could turn it into a car accident. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we do because it's like no, I'm not done. No, I'm not finished. No, I don't want it. And then sometimes it's like, you know what?
Okay, so maybe that's body language. So maybe that's body language. Like maybe it's like watching someone and like waiting. Like maybe that's part of it is like, it's not just about interrupting someone. It's like reading someone you know, the point where someone's like getting to like, they're about to tell the whole point of their story. Like you can't cut them off during that, but there's so many things that are happening. It's not just the words coming out of their mouth. Their body is changing. They're moving this way. Their eyes are raising. They're excited. They're about to deliver. And if you interrupt in the middle of that, they're going to want to murder you. And I think it's probably just like Sarah's right.
You just did it again very well. But that's complicated. I still really look up to Julie. You know what I mean? Like
That's because I'm old. It's not
because you're old. Don't make it cute.
Yeah, I'm fucking old.
It's for a lot of different reasons. I still really admire Julie. I just met her last year. But Sara, even when you just said the word surrender, it like does something physical to me. The idea of surrender, you know, it's a very powerful thing. And it's also a very scary thing to like surrender to somebody else's brain in their mouth as they take over the sentence and go like drive the train and you don't know where it's going. To take a slight left turn, because I do want to refocus on another quit that I'm hearing from you all and that I've read about you is you've shifted your team around a bit.
Yeah.
Like you had this 50-something manager when you were teenagers, you fired his ass, like you moved on to the next. I don't know how many people.
They did it late. They said they just got, that's new information. You signed it in 19. You said we just got out of that contract.
No, different ones.
Did I misunderstand that?
The first guy they fired after 6 months, they said.
That first guy was a douchebag. Sorry.
What Tegan was referencing was actually a record contract that sort of has carried over and we've re-upped for almost our entire career until very recently, which we severed.
So what made you stop?
I mean, without going too boringly into the pandemic, I think it just like everything stopped. We had time to evaluate. We were in a natural endpoint, I think, with a lot of things in our lives. And it felt like once we started breaking up with people, it was like we just broke up with everybody. We were like, now you're broken up with. Now we don't want to be in your record label. No, we don't want to work with your services anymore. And we just kind of started over.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Just strap in, Chad, because I got some etymology for you.
Oh boy.
The word Viore is Italian for out, kind of like outside. It can be used in different ways.
I love that. I have been very outdoorsy lately. And I've been like outside. I've been with the dog, making fires. Like I am excited about anything that references the outdoors. I love it.
Ever since COVID, I feel like if you're like me, you walk in your closet and there's like your like hard pants and your like real clothes, and then you really I just committed to athleisure, and like, why not make it look good?
I agree. I think athleisure can look beautiful, especially when it's Viore. I think it is a fashion statement while also being comfortable, while also being a lifestyle indicator.
They got a tennis skirt, they got a tennis dress, they have the halo dress. I can't wait to get mine. I'm very excited.
Here's a secret surprise that I like. So not only is it easy to wear because it's athleisure, it's comfortable, you can just walk outside in it and know that you look good and also feel good. It's also easy to buy because the website is easily navigated. My least favorite thing about shopping online is that these websites do not care about user experience. They only care about if they get your money or not. But this website is lovely. Everything you want is easily accessible. You can see it right there. You can see a model that kind of looks like something you might look like when you put it on, of all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I like that. I like size inclusivity because everybody deserves to be comfortable and active. But the women's performance jogger is a staple. They are incredibly soft. New colors just came in, so hurry to get them while you can because these guys sell out quick.
Viore is an investment in your happiness. For our listeners, they're offering 20% off your first purchase. Get yourself some of the most comfortable and versatile clothing on the planet at viore.com/quitters. That's VUORI.com/quitters.
And not only will you receive 20% off your first purchase, but enjoy free shipping on any U.S. orders over $75 and free returns. No restocking fees. Go to viore.com/quitters and discover the versatility of Viore clothing. This episode of Quitters is brought to you by Primal Kitchen.
How are you?
I'm very much feeling this. This is a holiday season when every other Christmas season, I don't have my kids. And it becomes kind of a spiritual thing for me, kind of a renewal, like taking stock of my life, cleaning out closets, getting rid of stuff, and kind of looking at the new year with sort of some positivity as opposed to like, what am I going to change and how am I going to be better? This year, Primal Kitchen is definitely going to be part of it. I want to nourish myself.
I love that. I'm going to be focusing on paying attention to what I want and blocking out some of the noise that pulls me in a million directions, like ordering food all the time, like going out to eat all the time. And so I'm going to be doing some cooking with Primal Kitchen for sure.
I've really come to love it. It's in my refrigerator. I have to say, I'm becoming more and more a fan every day. So Primal Kitchen for 2023, people. Quitters listeners can save 20% at primalkitchen.com/quitters. Or find Primal Kitchen products at your favorite local grocery store or retailer. What are you going to make?
I'm going to make keto buffalo chicken wings. I love a chicken wing. My favorite flavors are buffalo, lemon pepper, hot. And I know that I'm going to make these keto buffalo chicken wings. They're going to taste delicious. I'm going to feel good afterward. They're going to be all organic and yummy. And I'm going to have protein. I'm going to feel stronger. I'm going to be able to sleep well. It's going to be lovely. I can't wait. By the way, Julie, I bet you'll like this. Primal Kitchen is co-founded by a woman named Morgan Bueller-Zanotti. Proud mom of 2 with another on the way. I know someone else who has 3 kids.
I have 3 kids.
And is a woman founder.
And I'm a woman founder. I support women founders. It is so freaking hard to run a business, to work, to get out there and to be pregnant and raising kids. It's nearly impossible. And my hat is off to every woman that does it. Kudos to Morgan Bueller-Zanotti. Kudos to all women founders.
Are you good at breakups? What's your tone? Both of you are so chiseled. What in your demeanor?
We're very media trained. And I don't mean that in like a fake way. I just mean like we've been literally publicly talking about ourselves for 25 years. And, and I think that we understand how we're viewed and we also have a strategy of how to be viewed in the way that we want to be. But I also think that, one of the things that really draws people to us is our transparency, especially when it comes to all things that intersect with our career and our sisterly relationship. And it's a bit of a magician's game where we can, we show you a lot over here, which allows a big chunk of our life to remain quite private and and our own. Are we good at breakups? Am I good at breakups? I'll tell you what, I don't think I'm that. I don't think I am good at breaking up, and I definitely am not good. I'm not good at being broken up with. But I will say that throughout my life, the vast majority of romantic, professional, and personal relationships that would be categorized as breakups, I am still significantly close with almost all of those people. There are very few relationships in my life where I truly, truly am intimate with somebody, emotionally, physically, whatever, where I feel prepared to sever that relationship indefinitely and not talk to that person again. And so if that's a business relationship or that's a personal or romantic relationship, I work very hard at trying to preserve whatever is available on the other side. And that's always been something that's mattered to me. It's probably something that was ingrained in me very early on because of the way that our parents separated and their overall ability to leave whatever was adult and not for us to experience or see. We didn't have to live through their divorce. We didn't have to live through their bullshit. We just saw our parents respecting one another. And we've accumulated more step parents and exes. And I have like my 3 best friends in the world are my ex-girlfriends. I mean, it's just, I sort of learned like, If I get really close to you and we're going to break up, like I'm going to work really hard to figure out how we can still be in touch. And the same really goes for our team. Our managers who we had for the last 18 years, I love those men, I love them. And they were with us through 18 years. I want to be friends and I want to remain in their lives. And so, I think we worked really hard. We did not have a contract with them. And we negotiated our exit deal with each other in one day. And we did it over Zoom. And it was,
It took like 30 minutes. It wasn't even a day.
Yeah, like one day, like one call, like 1 hour, whatever, 45 minutes. We went back and forth a little bit with the contract with our lawyers, and then it was done. And
how many years were you together?
18 years.
18. So what's the moment before for the two of you? What's the moment before that quit, essentially? What's the moment before when you go, there's talk and there's talk and there's talk? Yes, it's happening. What was that moment?
I mean, look, this is where Sara and I, once again, we differ. I tend to get over things a little quicker than Sara. I always say I do my leaving in the relationship. So by the time I'm out, I've sort of like processed it and felt
Amen.
it. Yeah. Whereas Sarah's like going to spend a year, to quote her, drinking scotch and eating goldfish crackers and feeling upset alone. I'm just a little different. And, like Sarah said, we had this amazing team for 18 years and we love them and they're our friends and we still talk to them all the time. Hi, puppy.
That's
and
great.
Oh, Gertie.
we had time to think. Like Sarah said, we came off the road. We'd made 9 albums. We'd made a book. We'd done all these things. And then the pandemic hit and we were off the treadmill for a minute. We were able to stay home and think about what we wanted. And we started to have these really amazing monthly summits with our management team about what we wanted to do next. When the pandemic hit, we were in the middle of developing our memoir for TV and we started, going out and pitching it. We were also writing 2 graphic novels for 8 to 15-year-olds. We were building out podcast ideas. We re-recorded one of our early albums acoustic. Like, we're extremely ambitious and we never stop moving and we're kind of compulsively creative. And our managers were really amazing. In these like monthly summits, they admitted that some of this other work they weren't necessarily as invested in. They didn't care as much about the TV, film, book side of our business. And ultimately over, the course of many months, we just decided that we wanted a team that was officially sort of overseeing all of it. It's really hard to disconnect what we do from who we are. And so at this time in our career, to say that Tegan and Sara, the band and the touring operation, is one part of our business and the rest of it is another part was kind of impossible for us. We felt it all had to be under one umbrella. So I feel like, honestly, I really understood, and that's why it wasn't so hard. They were very sad to lose us as their like touring and recording artist, but I think as people, they understood that we were starting to build out the Tegan and Sara universe, and we needed proper representation for that. And I think also for Sara and I, we are getting to the age, like obviously Sara and her partner just had a child, but we're also just at the age where we don't want to spend 2.5 years touring 300 days a year. We want some normalcy. We want to build out our families. We want to have comfort. I don't want to live on a tour bus. Our parents are getting older. Our friends are getting older. I don't want to miss out on absolutely everything. Like 286 days a year to be on tour is absolutely not something Sara and I wanted to do anymore. And that meant shifting our business and looking at other interests. And so, I think the breakup was easier for us because we were able to articulate all the things we were feeling. We spent months talking about it prior to actually saying, hey, this is what we're doing. And I'd like to think that that's been the way we've been in a lot of our relationships, both romantic and personal and also business relationships, is we're very pragmatic and we're very thorough in investigating
pragmatic,
things.
But we're also, I think one of our strengths, and I think this is required when you're an artist, is your world building, your dreamers, I don't know, whatever euphemism you want to use about what it is to be creative and to sort of see into the future of what you want to make or what you want to be. I started to feel like the people around us, the team around us, however proud, however loyal they were, I feel like they had stopped seeing the dream with us.
Why?
I think that's their personal journey, like maybe they started seeing something different for themselves. Maybe the job, I know for a fact, like for example, we have a creative director who we've worked with for now for like 20 years. And, she still does work for us, but it was in a more formal position for many, many years. And during the pandemic, she also, in some ways, she kind of broke up with us, I guess. And then we sort of broke up with each other. I think at some point, we are a planet. We take up so much time and space and energy in people's lives. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but I can start to see how that gravitational pull towards what we want, what we need, what we're looking at, where we want to go, I can see how it can sort of take away from whatever you're trying to build on your end of things. And, and I think, again, to go back to like whether I'm a good person to break up with or if I'm good at it or bad at it, I want to change my answer. I think I am good at it because I do feel once I get over the initial breakup, I have a lot of empathy and compassion. I believe this is one life, like I don't know what happens before or after, or I don't know any of that stuff. All I know is right now. And I always try to think to myself, like, I'm just doing me out here. And if it's, and I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't think of it as selfish or selfless or anything like that, but like, I don't know, YOLO. Like if people, like
you're both so potent. I don't ask this facetiously, but like what planet are you?
We're Saturn, we're 2 rings around the same planet.
Thank you. That's an excellent answer. Do you feel like there is a sharpened quit that we were able to find here? I think There were a couple, but I'm not sure which one
I
is the
think
one.
that these women are incredibly talented. By the way, I'm a massive fangirl and have been like most of the people in the world ever since Grey's Anatomy, which was probably a big life-changing moment for a career-changing moment.
Huge.
I should say, for the both
Yeah,
of
it
you.
was.
And so that makes me a very basic Johnny-come-lately, but so what? That was a huge moment hearing you for the first time going, I am immediately downloading that music stat. And maybe only Sara was tormented over it and not Tegan, but it's a big thing to shift a team. I've been with the same managers since I was 21,
Wow.
22.
Wow.
That's so cool.
And we're talking 30 years. They took me on when I was like literally just out of college. And there's a safety and a comfort there. I would need another version of myself to talk to about that.
You know what I was going to say too is that Tegan said the thing about how she quits, like she does the leaving in the relationship. And I want to say one thing observationally about, I mean, that 30 years is a long time. 18 years, that felt like that was our whole life, to me, like our whole musical life. I think the function and sort of one of my strengths in our partnership is that I am somebody who sits back and observes and processes a lot. And I feel like I saw Tegan doing the leaving in our relationship with our managers
while it was happening.
And I feel like I saw it because I saw her unhappiness. I saw her trying to create new pathways. I saw her trying to fix the problem. She mentioned these management summits. A lot of these ideas were Tegan's. Okay, we're going to fix it. We're going to get this. Okay, we're going to problem solve. We're going to do that. We're going to do an audit of this system and we're going to figure this thing out. But what I saw was, okay, Tegan is trying to figure out if there is a path forward with these gentlemen. And at some point I was like, there is not. And so I come in and I say,
she had already started the leaving.
She'd already started the leaving. And so I was like, and now I think it is time to leave. And initially Tegan was like, no. I don't have time for that right now. We need to have these guys in place. And I was like, it's done. It's a done deal. And, and then I think what happens for me is that I am able to help sever the relationship. And Tegan is like, great. Cauterize the wound. We're good. We're moving on. And I'm like, no, now I need to spend some time doing some leaving. I need to have that time to kind of figure things out. And so I think like in that moment, Tegan sees me as like delaying, the breakup or she's kind of like, oh my God, get over it. Whereas I'm like, yeah, but I made space for you to have your time with quitting this relationship. And I now need some time to figure out what comes next and to help us as a team evaluate like what comes next for us and who comes next for us. Whereas I think Tegan was like, once we were done with our managers, she was like the next day, she was like, so should we start taking meetings? And I was like, oh my God, let's at least sit Shiva for like a week or something. My God, we were with them for 18 years.
Are you guys Jewish too?
I'm married to a Jewish woman. It's like, let's just sit here and grieve the relationship, think about it, eat some food, and then let's reevaluate,
Goldfish and scotch.
Goldfish and scotch.
Were your foods of choice. We only have a few minutes left, and I really wanted to ask about your TV show, because that is a huge leap from music. I don't know anything about music, but in my fantasy world, and I'll tell you in 30 seconds or less, it's the two of you sitting in a room going, like the Beatles documentary.
No.
Like, is it this? No, is it this? Is it this? And then suddenly you're playing like Here Comes the Sun or something. And I know a lot about TV and film, and that is an endlessly back and forth with the studio and notes and this and that. It's very different. How was that for you guys creatively?
Yeah, look, I mean, this was our first experience, and I think similar to our music career, somewhere inside one of us, clearly that someone lodged a horseshoe, because we had what has been described as not a typical experience. We went out and took 5 meetings and sold the show, and less than a year later it was made. And the woman who developed the show with us is Cleo Duvall, who's obviously been in the industry for a very long time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, incredible actor, writer, and now director and show creator with us, and has been a friend of ours for 15 years. And, when she read an early draft of the book, came to us and said, don't just sell your story and don't just hand this off to somebody, be involved, develop it with me. Be executive producers, be involved in telling the story. It's your story. You only get to tell it once. And so I think, the 3 of us worked really well together. And then we brought on Laura Cattrall, who had come to us from, she did all 5 seasons of Insecure. So she's another amazing co-showrunner, writer, and also queer. And, both Clea and Laura just had such an innate sense of the time, our relationships, the 90s, queerness, friendship, and love music. And so I just feel like their ideas were so strong. The outlines just were incredible, and the scripts were as well. And we didn't have a lot of notes. And the studio was actually, Amazon was kind of amazing. They were highly involved, but mostly just we kind of got just green light after green light after green light. And I am so happy and impressed with how the show turned out, and our experience was really positive. And so we immediately have started to develop other stuff, and that feels really exciting. But we've been warned that our experience is not normal.
I'm so happy for you as a fan and as somebody who's really excited to see this show. And you got to develop with Clea Duvall, who is like a hero of mine. I just think she's incredible. Yeah. Did she do a lot of the directing as well?
Yeah, she did it. Yeah, she did six of 8 episodes.
She did 6 of 8. Yeah.
Did you use one actor or 2?
2. They're actually a set of twins that we discovered on TikTok. We hadn't started casting the show yet, but we were talking about twins all the time. Tegan and I had sold another project about twins, and we were talking a lot about, oh God, the hardest part of doing our show is going to be finding the right set of twins or the right person to play a set of twins. And then I'm not making this up. Tegan just one day sent me a TikTok link and goes, oh my God, these girls are so funny. They're totally us in high school. And it was a set of twins who live in Fresno, California, never acted, never played music. They worked at 2 different pizza restaurants, and they were just 20 years old, hanging out in Fresno, making funny TikToks with each other. Sometimes they would do the dancing thing, but sometimes especially Rayleigh, who plays Tegan on the show, she would do this thing that I absolutely think of as a Tegan thing. She just would give tours of things and hey guys, this is my car. This is the stuff I have on the seats. Here's my lunch.
But it was mesmerizing. I would just. It was amazing.
No, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Hey guys, so I'm on my lunch break and I got sushi. So I'm gonna show you my sushi now. So this is my sushi, and so I got the California roll. And if you hadn't had California, and I would be why am I watching this?
They were so adorable, and their dynamic as sisters and as twins had a really specific feeling. I wouldn't necessarily even say it was. I mean, we can stretch it and say, oh yeah, they remind us of us, but I think what they just was really compelling and fascinating twin sisters. They also seemed really queer to us. So we had this moment of damn, did we just accidentally find the stars of our show? We did. That was exactly what happened, because we went through the casting process. We saw dozens of twins. We saw wonderful musical twins who had acted, twins who could do it all. And Tegan and I just were, specifically me, I was relentless about it. Every time we would see these casting calls, and I would say yeah, I can imagine the Irish ones. Okay. I mean, those girls from Vancouver are cool, but I would just be it's Season and Rayleigh, man. Those are the kids. That's who it has to be. So we did a call out on TikTok because they didn't follow us, so I couldn't DM them. And I was can somebody please tell Rayleigh to follow us so I can talk to her? And within the hour, I was texting with her, and I was you and your sister you have to email this email address. You need to audition for our show. And they did. And we put them into acting classes and music classes. And they came up to Canada less than a year later, and we're literally shooting a TV show, and they were the stars of the show. And they are phenomenal. They are stars. They are absolute stars.
May I ask, are they queer?
They are gay.
Yeah. Do they share that?
Yeah.
They are. That is.
Julie, this was in the dossier.
Uh-oh.
You know what?
It'll make it so much better. Your reaction is so organic.
I want to ask one last TV film question, because I know we have to jump soon. This is a question for Tegan. Tegan, blue is the warmest color. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I actually did see it. I saw it in the theater and I loved it. I go and see every queer film and TV show I possibly can, even the bad ones, because I just really believe we have to support to get more made. That one I think is good.
I would not say it was great. And I believe that from the first second I saw you on this screen, that I now am convinced that, is her name Lea Seydoux? Is that how you pronounce it?
Okay, I don't know how you pronounce it
That
either.
she is doing an impression of you in that movie. That's how I feel.
I'll have to rewatch it.
Go look at some images.
The critique at the time was that it was very much a straight lens, because it's a male director, straight male director, and that there are elements to it that feel very much like what people perceive queer culture to be like, or lesbian relationships to be like. But I'm gonna rewatch it, because I do feel again, I don't know, storytelling is storytelling, and I don't think that you can only tell a good story as a queer person.
When I saw it on
you
West
liked
4th
it.
Street, so don't trust my taste or point of view. It was.
You know what, Chad? I'm gonna get back to it.
It was raunchy. All right.
It is raunchy. It is raunchy.
Yeah.
It is raunchy. Yeah.
Well, we really
thank you.
appreciate the two of you taking so much time. And I have one last question that I'm just interested because I'm convinced you're not identical twins. By the way, I'd like to put $5 on the fact that you're not, and that it's going to be awesome because you're going to be like, genetically, we're not even that close. Are you mirror twins?
In my research for this book that we're writing, my leaning is that I think we might be mirror twins.
But is one of you right-handed and one of you left-handed?
No, but everything else, like the way, like our faces, like just it gets it. When I was reading about it, I was like, shit, we might be this. But I here's the thing about the DNA. I just 8 years ago or something, I was out for dinner. I was dating this woman, and she introduced me to friends of hers, and one of them was the DNA expert for the LA County Sheriff's Office. And so, like, when there was a murder or a heinous crime in like LA County, she gets the call and she goes out. And so, I was peppering with questions over this dinner. I found her and her partner really interesting, and they were the ones who were like, because I, of course, asked the very obvious question, like, what if I murdered someone, my DNA with Sarah, like, like that whole thing. And they were like, had lots of really interesting answers about it, but they were like, a lot of twins, especially from your era, because we were born in 1980, they were like, there's a chance that you aren't actually identical twins. And like, you should come, they offered, like one of them offered was like, come down to the, to the office and we'll test you and find out if you really are. And I was so excited, probably 2 cocktails in. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get Sarah. We're going to do this. And then they were like, we have to caution you though, because, a lot of your identity is actually probably rooted in the idea that you're an identical twin. And imagine you need to like work through like what it would be like to find out. So when Sarah and I during the pandemic wrote this pitch about identical or about twins, and one of the big things on it was that we will start the story by telling that story and then going and getting tested. And then at the end of the project, you find out if we're actually identical twins or not. And because there are things that are distinctly different, like Sarah, when we were kid, like her face is narrower and like she needed like a retainer, like, she has asthma. Like there's all these things. Like
what I actually needed was braces, and what I got was
I didn't want to say it though.
What you got was a retainer.
Say
no. What you wanted was braces. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I said what you needed. Oh my God.
I didn't want to say that, but like, like there were like actual physical differences very early on as we've grown up. Like I'm taller, like, it's just like, it's interesting. So, but we'll find out.
I do think you're very different and a joy. And I just want to say I have twin godsons who my best friend who gave birth to them said, well, they're not identical and they're not identical and they're not identical. And around age 4 or 5, I was like, they are. And she had them tested and they were identical. So they started not identical and then became identical in their identity.
Wow.
But it was very early on. So they didn't have to struggle with that one. But I think it'll be very interesting and I will be paying close attention.
We'll let you know.
No, thank you all so much. Congratulations on your show.
Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Can't wait
So
to see it.
lovely.
Thank you.
you.